Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diablo to D&D. My name is David, and today we're going to be going over the new charms, both the unique charms and how to create your own for your players. Charms in Diablo 2 are a fantastic way to customize your character. They were introduced in the Lord of Destruction expansion. They fill up your inventory and just provide passive benefits to your character. Now, in D&D, you don't really have an inventory slot that you can kind of put these charms into. So instead, I have made some modifications to the rules to make them less powerful. Something to note about the difference between D&D and Diablo is the sense of scale. D&D has a very shrunk, or their numbers are much smaller than Diablo. Diablo, you can get damage in the thousands. If you're dealing damage in the thousands in D&D, that is insane. I've actually wanted to do like a presentation on the value, what I call the value of one, and the absolute value of one in video games and card and board games. Because like, what does one mean? One in D&D means a whole lot more than one in Diablo in terms of like damage versus like levels and what. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So what I have done is said that charms are restricted to a single charm affecting a player. This way you have kind of a charm slot. Think of it like, a helmet or something like that, where you can only have one of them at a time. This does a few things. One, it restricts the power level of the player from getting too high. Another is that it allows me to increase the power level of the charms without getting too dangerous for stacking multiples. So, for example, something that increases or that adds fire damage. I can have 1d4 additional fire damage on your weapon attacks, which is, a second level spell or something like that. And that way you're not stacking 15, 16 charms of this level, of this scale, and suddenly smacking a creature and dealing, 16d4 damage. Now, I chose not to make them attunement. This might be changed because some of the more powerful ones, like the unique charms, are incredibly powerful. But that is something that I'll play with and see if it's worth it. Okay, so let's read the entry that I have made. Charms grant passive effects to the person carrying them. Their effects vary widely from bonus defense to elemental damage to additional life. They are powerful, so a creature can be affected by only one charm at a time. If a creature carries multiple charms, they choose which charm to use at the end of a long rest. A charm must be worn or carried in order to gain its effects. The table below determines whether a charm has a prefix, suffix, or both. Charms come in three sizes: small, large, and grand, which determines the strength of its affixes and may affect which affixes it can have. After determining its affix, roll a d100 and consult the charm's affix table to see which affixes the charm has. I think the wording could be a little different. This is kind of a rush job just because this is the time that I have to record. So the table itself is a 40% chance for a prefix, 40% chance for suffix, and a 20% chance for both. The reason for this is so that there's not a huge chance for a charm to drop with both a prefix and a suffix. So there's another limiter to how powerful charms can be. Now you can, as a DM, you can simply say, okay, well, it has these qualities. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're just determining entirely randomly, you want procedurally generated charms, this is a table that you can work with. Now, I am not going to be going over each and every affix on the charm tables. In fact, as of recording, I haven't even gotten the tables finished just yet. Again, trying to fit this recording within the time that I have. But the tables are there, just not fully complete. However, I can talk about the general qualities of the affixes. So currently, the first major section is a plus to skills. So things like the Amazon's passive skills, bow and crossbow skills, javelin and spear skills, something, something, something. The individual trees for each class. So there's quite a few of them. Those are probably going to be removed from the table because they're very specific. They work in Diablo. They don't quite work in D&D. In part because the trees could be broken up across entire subclasses. And so having it as a very narrow focus is just a bit much. It also adds a lot of bloat to the table, and I'm trying to cut that down. The next section is attack rating. This is your bonuses to hit, for example. We also have minimum damage, maximum damage, and then attack rating and maximum damage. Those are probably going to be combined. I could probably do like a minimum damage is whenever you roll a 1, it's treated as a 2 or something like that. Maximum damage would probably increase like the size of the damage die. Attack rating, maximum damage, that's probably going to get removed. There's a bunch of elemental damage. That's pretty easy, just additional damage, 1d4 or such and such. The size does determine the amount of damage. So what I'll probably do is say, this affix grants 1d4 on a small charm, 1d6 on a large charm, 1d8 on a grand charm. There's also defense, which is just defense. There's resist cold, resist fire, resist lightning, resist poison. There's all resistance. These are probably going to end up being very similar to the Paladin's resist element aura, where it reduces the damage. And then maybe on the large charm, it's just resistance to that damage. Though I guess I could say if I have a 1% chance to get this, I could say that it has just flat resistance to that elemental type. I don't know how much I want to do that, but it's possible, I guess. All resistance, probably going to get removed. There's a bonus to mana as well, and that one probably could be like a random cantrip or first or second level spell. That could be really good, actually. Introducing a new cantrip into an adventure could be very helpful, especially if you need mending, or you need, like, the fighter needs to have they've got bows, but like the fighter needs some fire damage, and so you can get firebolt or create bonfire or something like that. It helps shift around the utility of some of the class-specific cantrips. Maximum stamina, probably going to be removed. I usually do something with exhaustion, but And then better chance of magical items, also probably going to get removed. It's just not helpful in D&D. In the suffixes table, I think mostly everything is the same. It does have faster hit recovery, which might be like a reduction of critical hits, perhaps. There's bonus to stats, dexterity, strength. There's faster run walk, which is easy enough to do. You have 5, 10, 15 feet of additional movement. There's a bonus to life. Bonus to life might actually be interesting. That one is just increases your maximum life. That might be good. Easy enough to do. The only problem that I can see running into this is the possibility of two very similar, what are they called? Affixes running, butting up into each other. So, for example, if you have +1 to maximum damage, or not maximum damage, +1 to minimum damage. If you have a bonus to your minimum damage, that's on both tables, and maybe I could remove that from the prefixes table. That's not a bad idea, so that there is no overlap between the prefixes and suffixes table. The suffixes table is pretty small, and the prefixes table is pretty big, so I might modify those things a little bit. But those are your basic charms. They are just randomly created and, customized to flavor as you'd like. But there are a few charms that are actually unique, that they are special, specific charms. And you can find them in the magic items section of the items file. The first is the Annihilus. The Annihilus in Diablo is found when you kill the Uber Diablo by selling Stone of Jordan rings to a vendor. In offline mode, it is a single Stone of Jordan. In online mode, it's a certain number across a server. But here, this is a wondrous item. It is a charm, but it is an artifact level item. This is a very specific charm because it is so dang good. When you finish a long rest, you choose an ability score, and you get a +1 bonus to that score up to a maximum of 20, and you gain proficiency in all skills. The Annihilus in Diablo grants a +1 bonus to all skills, very, very, very handy to have, but also a bonus to your attributes, and to your resistances, and to your experience gained. So the skills I transferred over to proficiency with all skills. Attributes, I made that +1 to an ability score, and I'm cutting resistances and experience gained because I think it's already good enough, and tacking on too many things just makes it too complex. Granted, it is an artifact, so maybe not. Maybe it could be more powerful, but I like where it's sitting for now. A little further down, you can see that there is Charm. This is just a pseudo magic item. Small charms are uncommon, large charms are rare, grand charms are very rare. Because it is a scaling, power level. So small has the weakest effects, grand charms have the most powerful effects, yada yada. I'd consider making grand charm a rare object or a rare item instead, but I decided, especially since that they have the most powerful effects, but also the most effects that they can have, that I'm going to leave them as very rare. The next one is Gheed's Fortune. This one was fun to create because it's so unique. It's so different from any other charm. In Diablo, it grants additional gold from monsters, it cuts vendor prices, and it increases chance to get magic items. So I had so much fun trying to create this thing because it was absolutely nuts. What I ended up on is when you finish a long rest, 1d12 gold coins appear in a small pouch within arm's reach, or in your coin pouch if you have one. Whenever you make a charisma persuasion check to reduce or increase the price of a sale, you may use your charisma score in place of the roll on the d20. I know the wording's a little weird, and I know that there's an ability somewhere that has it clarified, but I can't find it for the life of me. Anyway, this was so much fun. You can't say, oh, this monster dropped X amount of gold and you find more gold. So instead I said Gheed's Fortune produces coins. I originally had it as like a lower amount on a short or long rest, and then it kind of got weird. So I just said, hey, you get more gold when you finish a long rest. So you can make money literally by sleeping. It's an artifact. That's just, it's an artifact. As for the sale, reducing the cost or increasing the cost of a sale, this is the merchant's dream. So you bump your charisma up, and you can, essentially anytime you roll less than your charisma modifier on a d20, then you can use your charisma score in its place. That's probably the better wording. Anyway, this is the unique grand charm. Gheed's Fortune is the unique grand charm. The next one, however, is the unique large charm. This is the Hellfire Torch. This is the very, very, very special one, and probably the most powerful. It's a wondrous item, charm, artifact. It gives you resistance to fire damage. Hellfire and whatnot. When you speak the command word, you may have this charm emit bright light out to 30 feet and dim light to an additional 30 feet, or end the effect. The charm increases your light radius, which isn't really all that good in Diablo, but pretty decent in D&D. But the best one is whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, if you rolled a 16 to 20 on the d20, you may cast Firestorm in addition to the damage, except its area becomes a 30-foot cone and you choose which creatures make the saving throw. Your spellcasting ability for this spell is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, determined when you chose this charm at the end of a long rest. This is the Marshal's dream to have. You slap this on a fighter, on a dual-wielding fighter, and suddenly they're just bam, 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 and just blowing out, a ton of damage. 4d4, end game stuff, yeah, that's 4d4 additional fire damage in a 30-foot cone. Now, granted, it is a, all or nothing, but, it's 30-foot cone. Somebody's going to be failing that save, unless you dumped all three of those mental stats. This one in Diablo is great for your multi-attacking things. Your Kick Assassin, this is great for the Fury Druid or the Fury Barbarian, Frenzy Barbarian, where they want to attack as many times as possible. It's not so good for Bash Barbarians or, where you're hitting one massive hit. So Rogues, I guess, might want this as well. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. You get resistance to fire damage, and you want advantage on those attacks. So you want to get as much of that hit as possible. So, but this is the one that I had to change the most. It is a 25% chance to cast a level 10 Firestorm on striking. It's ported directly over. I pulled out the class skills. One, I didn't want to step on the toes of the Annihilus. And two, it's very class specific, so anybody can use it. The benefit to the attributes, I kind of shoved off on the Annihilus as well. The resistances, instead of all resistances, I just said it's fire themed and made it fire. The light radius, like I mentioned, already translated. And then charges to Hydra. Nobody uses the Hydra charges. Nobody uses the Hydra charges. They're just not good. It's mostly done for the skill levels and attributes and resistances and the Firestorm. Light Radius is basically nothing. Hydra is basically nothing. So I pulled those out and made it just a fire-themed charm. Lots of fire damage, resistance to fire damage. Now, there is one more set of charms that Diablo 2 has, and those are the Sunder charms. These were introduced in Diablo 2 Resurrected. They're not in the classic version. And these are charms that allow you to break immunities. It sets the resistances of creatures that have 100% or higher down to 95. So you're dealing 1/20th of the damage of your damage to those creatures, but it's still, something. And then there's other effects on top of that can reduce that further, but I think it does have a 1/5 reduction. So if an effect reduces fire resistance by 10 or 10%, then instead it reduces it by 2%. So it goes from 95 to 93. Still a sizable damage increase, but, it's 2% additional damage. So the effect of the Sunder charms in what I've created is whenever you are using this charm, damage you deal treats immunity to a damage type as resistance to that type instead, and you gain vulnerability to that damage type. Use the table below to determine which damage type this charm has. So each of the charms in Diablo 2, they sunder the immunity, but they also cut your resistance to that type. So it's a trade-off. Now, granted, you can pile up a ton of resistances to that specific type to offset it, but you got to build your character very specifically. But this does allow monotype builds to actually do all of the content in the game. But in D&D, this is a huge trade-off. This is you never find immunity reduction. You never find anything that says immunity is no longer immunity. It's resistance or just removed. The only one that I could find is the Pyromancy Sorcerer subclass from Planeshift Kaladesh, which treats immunity as resistance and removes resistance entirely, treats resistance as non-resistance. So I kind of used that template here. But, like I said, very, very, very dangerous, or very difficult to do. Now, the Sunder charms here are legendary. They're not artifacts. They are legendary, so you can find multiples of these. But you'll notice that there is a table that has 13 different types. That's because Diablo 2 has 6 damage types: fire, cold, lightning, poison, magic, and physical. D&D has 13 different types. You have your 3 physical damages, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, and then 10 elemental types: acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, necrotic, poison, psychic, radiant, and thunder. So what I've done is made new charms. Bone Break, I've made bludgeoning, cold rupture is cold, flame rift is fire, black cleft is force. That one was kind of wonky because it could have been necrotic, it could have been force, it could have been psychic, but I decided to go with force because I had ideas for the names of other charms. Crack of the Heavens is still lightning, and then Rotting Fissure is poison. Now, the other ones are... Well, I spent some time trying to come up with the names. The naming convention for the Sunder charms are that it is type of damage and then some kind of splitting thing. So I had some fun coming up with the different names. As of recording, I still haven't gotten the acid one down. It's melt or melting something, but I've got Withering Decay for the necrotic, Organ Pierce for piercing, Mind Snap for psychic, Light Burst for radiant, Crashing Breach for thunder, and Flesh Cut for slashing. Names subject to change at my own whim. And those are the charms. I really, really enjoyed making these. There were some parts that were very difficult to come up with, the names, for example. But overall, I think this is something that can be just tossed into your own D&D games, something that can be carried over into D&D official, rather than just keeping this as a Diablo specific thing. Now, if I was going to make the charms more D&D-esque, I would probably put more abilities into the table, but as of right now, the table is just the table. So I had a ton of fun coming up with the table, though. Modifying it and moving some stuff around, organizing it. So much fun. Anyway, I am going to end it here. You can contact me at XenozFan2, that is XenozFan2 on Blue Sky and Reddit. And you can contact the channel directly at Diablo TODND on Blue Sky and YouTube. Thank you much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good whatever.